Hello, and welcome to the Imperishable Consciousness Platform, where I'm your host, Adrian Camacho. We look to record and preserve modern history in order to inspire the next generation of leaders and changemakers. Today is episode 5, and we are joined by a very special guest who is a Beloit College graduate, performance coach, innovator, and the former SVP and the Chief Customer Officer of the Clorox Company, Matt Laszlo. Thank you for joining us.
You got it, AC. Glad to be here.
So, just to start off, tell us a little about yourself, like where are you from, kind of like what's brought you to this point.
Yeah, originally from Columbus, Georgia. Grew up there. It's about 100 miles south of Atlanta. Came to Beloit College. I started here the fall of 1988. Graduated from here in 92 with an economics management degree, journalism minor. And while I was here, I got to do a lot of different fun things, some in the broadcast area. I broadcast the men's and women's basketball 4 years, played football, baseball, was an RA. Really made a lot out of the experience. It was really developmental and a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you were a football and baseball player. Did you originally get recruited to play both sports, or how did that kind of work
I'd
out?
say primarily at the time was football.
Yeah.
Baseball was being brought back as a program, so it had only been around for a few years when I got here as a freshman. So football was the primary thing. I was the kicker, and then in baseball, I was a pitcher and played the outfield and first base.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that's very empowering or kind of inspiring for you to see how the team has come from when you started. Like you said, it was really kind of kicking back up, and now it's obviously winning conference championships and all that stuff. So I feel like that's pretty cool for you to see.
It's definitely a fun legacy thing to know that I was a part of in the first steps towards what it's become, which is a real powerhouse program, the baseball team that is. And, it's wild to see Dave DeGeorge, who's been coaching it now for 30 years.
Exactly.
I played with him. He was a senior and I was a freshman, and then his first year coaching, I was still a player on the team. So it's certainly the connection. You're absolutely right, Adrian. It feels, it's really kind of hard to almost process when you go, wow, how this started and then where it is now. Just very proud of Dave and the team.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. And obviously, David George obviously left his legacy, and so did his father on the school and sports program. So shout out to them, and that's very awesome to hear that you were very close with them, especially at the time you played with them even. So just overall, how would you say that you would describe your time at Beloit College, and your overall your experience and time here?
Yeah, very busy for sure, and a lot of different emotions throughout. Certainly coming here as a first-year student, there weren't many others from the South.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anybody. I'd say that was an anxious time for sure, feeling like, will I fit in? How will I know people or get to know people? Then there's always you want to go off to a good start academically. So then I would say I spent probably a lot of my time focused on the sports and seeing if I could do well in those. But outside of that, I would say the experiences I had with friends, incredibly fun. I definitely laughed a lot.
Yeah.
And then was a lot of developmental experiences as well that I got to have. How to work with such a diverse group of people, which this college has, to how to deal with conflict when you're an RA. You get your fair share of that.
Yeah.
So all those things I think I noticed later as my career developed, that a lot of the experiences I had here were very foundational in terms of my leadership style. So I had a good experience for sure while I was here.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And would you say that being from the South and being from Georgia, did you ever experience being homesick, obviously, and did you ever even visit Beloit College even before coming here? Because I know a lot of people that live that far away don't even visit. Sometimes they're kind of it's kind of being dropped off in the middle of Wisconsin, and they don't know what to think or I don't know. Was that similar to you, or what would you say?
That was in there. I was here on campus a couple days ago. The college, this is the season where admitted students are brought for an open house. So I gave the opening address to the students and their families. And so I told this story there as well. I came one time for a visit to Beloit College while I was still in high school. It was my senior year, and I came in the middle of January, and it was waist-deep snow. So it was not strategically probably the smartest thing to do, but I certainly got to see it at its most wintry.
Yeah.
But while I was here, I would say probably my lowest point where I was homesick, I'd been here for maybe 4 or 5 weeks. we'd had a road football game at Knox,
Yeah.
and all my stuff got stolen out of the locker room at Knox.
Yeah, that's
so I
horrible
came
here.
back in just a pair of shorts and my jersey, no
Yeah.
shoes, no keys, no wallet, no ID. That was probably a dark moment where I thought, like, all right, maybe this isn't where I'm meant to be.
Yeah.
But I actually had a really great moment with Beloit security. I'm standing, it was that weekend, there was a big festival going on, and it's still kind of legendary here, called the Folk and Blues Festival.
Yeah, I've heard of that,
And so there's a huge party going on campus on the academic side outdoors. And I'm in my residence hall, and I can't get in my room. So I called security. I had no way to prove who I was. I'm a freshman, I don't have an ID. And so the security guard said to me, "What's the capital of Washington?" And I said, "Olympia." And he said, "All right, I'll let you in." He said, "Anyone who would know that detail must be, they belong here." It was such a lift because he trusted me that it also helped calm me down and made me realize that being a part of Beloit College is, you're really part of a family, and people have your back, and in that tough moment. So after that, I wouldn't say I felt homesick. I missed friends and people who were important to me who were back home, but I loved being here. It was great.
Yeah. And I'm sure that being on both sports teams kind of gave you like a immediate friend group and people to kind of associate yourself with. But where did your love for sports kind of begin, would you say?
Yeah, I certainly as a little kid,
Yeah.
I always, emulated athletes that I saw, played all sorts of sports growing up, certainly football. Actually, football was not till I was in high school, but baseball, basketball, soccer. I loved being on a team, and I tended to be pretty good, so I got a lot of opportunities. So getting the opportunity to do that at the college level was pretty special, and being able to do it in a place where then you could also have balance and do other things beyond the sport, that was really great.
Yeah. What would you say that being like both like a baseball and football player like in college taught you? Like obviously you kind of like managing both academics, athletics, and social life. What would you say like it kind of taught you?
Yeah, I think that certainly time management, while Beloit and I think a lot of Division III schools are certainly gracious and understand you're going to be involved in other things, but it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, playing a sport as well, it's time consuming, and so you have to balance, and especially football is not every day you want to go to practice, especially as it gets colder and colder. So the discipline side of things, and then just working together with teammates towards a goal.
Yep.
Anytime you're part of a big team like that, you're going to have different personalities, different opinions. Not everybody's going to get along all the time, but it taught me how to work through that with people.
Yeah.
It also showed me the joy of being able to turn something around. As when I got here, there were several others as well who arrived. The football team had, I think, won one game the year before. And then my freshman, sophomore year, we won 6 games each year. And then the last 2 years, we made the conference championship both times. Baseball, we were really bad, but then we got to the conference tournament my last 2 years, and we even won a game. So I look back at those things and think that to see how you're a part of something that is not considered special or doing well, but you work, you improve, you collaborate with others, and then you elevate the performance. There's a great satisfaction in that, and that's something I got here a lot.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something that is like inspiring to others, and I feel like anybody that is experiencing that, whether it's like a club, a team. I mean, I know a lot of teams here at Beloit College. We've seen like even like the baseball. Obviously, the baseball team has improved. The soccer team, the basketball team, we saw they made a great run. When I got here my freshman year, they weren't that good, but they were still a good team, but not as good as they are now. So I feel like just seeing that improvement is very inspiring to everybody. Whether it be like a club, even like how many members you have a part of your club, your class sizes. I know your class sizes have increased. You maybe need to deny people now sometimes in your classes. I don't know if you do, but
yeah, that sort of happened. So I teach 2 classes, as you know. It was nip tuck, but you were able to pass my original course, Navigating Your Career. No, you did great, Adrian. But that class is now, it's the 9th semester in a row I've taught it. We've got 27 in there, which is more than I should be doing and I will be doing moving forward.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see there's been demand, and then the college has added a marketing minor as well. So I was asked to create the marketing principles and strategy course, which is important towards the minor. And so the first semester of teaching is this one, and if I'd let everybody in, it would have probably been 60, which is not at all. I'm letting it be 42, which I will, for those of you thinking about it, I will never do that again, even though it has gone well and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But smaller classes are certainly the desire. In this case, because it's the first time offered, and we have so many people who this might be their last semester, I wanted them to have a chance to at least be part of it. And it's worked out nicely, but ideal would probably be more like 30.
Yeah. And obviously we talked about like your student side at Beloit College. We just touched on like your teaching side. What's kind of brought you back to Beloit College to be a teacher, would you say?
Yeah, so like a lot of people, when you graduate from college, you kind of get immersed in life and your career, and I really fell out of touch with this place for a long time. And no real good reason other than you get busy and you get distracted with what's right in front of you. My career took some interesting twists and turns, but the last 14 years working for a corporation, I was at the Clorox company, which is based in Oakland, California, about a $7 billion company, a lot of different brands. And the last 5 years I was there, I was the chief customer officer. I know you mentioned that at the beginning.
Yep.
And I had 1,100 people around the world who report into me, and I started to realize that the stories I would tell to try and inspire or give people some insight into how to deal with certain things, a lot of those stories would come back to experiences I had while I was a student here.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, like, wow, all these fundamental, foundational things that had happened for me while I was here were now impacting other people's lives. I thought, well, I want to connect again with the college. So while I was still at Clorox, and I created a couple different internship roles, and we hired people from Beloit, like students from Beloit, so that was exciting.
Yeah.
And I came back for a visit, did a guest appearance in a class, and that went well. It was a lot of fun. The college ultimately, when I left Clorox to start my own business as a consultant and executive coach, Beloit called me maybe a month after I had left Clorox and said, we're thinking of adding this role called executive in residence, where it's someone who's been there, done that in the corporate world, and can come back and connect with students.
Yeah.
And they said, we think you could be good at it. And obviously that was terribly wrong, but I did it anyway, and created the class that you took, Navigating Your Career. That first semester I ever did it was January of 2020, so right before COVID. And the first 7 weeks I flew back and forth from California to teach here each week.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And now living in the Midwest, it's certainly not as big of a challenge to commute.
Yeah.
But I wanted to come back and make a difference in young people's lives, because I remember how anxious I felt when I was about to launch.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. And I realized that there were things I could probably come back, help students here with, so they feel more comfortable, more calm, more confident, so that when they get that first job, or even as they're looking for it, they relax a bit and they're going to be a better version of themselves. You know, Adrian, like, you get stressed out, and cognitively it takes a toll on you. You're not at your best. So I'm trying to fill in blanks that probably you wouldn't get from regular classes with things that early in your career will help you be more effective.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what's very important from your classes, that they always relate to like real world experiences and like expectations or like things like that. And then even the way that you conduct yourself as like the teacher of the class, you always say like, oh, I expect you to like respond to emails, because when you have a boss, they're gonna expect you to like show that you read it and stuff like that. I feel like that's something that most professors maybe don't ask for, but I feel like that's something that's like changes your perspective and is like more real world view, and I feel like that's very important. And I also feel like you touched on in the beginning how Beloit College kind of left that lasting impact on you. I feel like that it's kind of crazy to think about how you were at such a big company, still relating back to Beloit College, and I feel like that's very, very powerful, like very shows the large impact that it had on you, and I feel like that's very important. So
yeah, you see, I'll add to that too. All I ever did was go to Beloit College. I have a degree from here. I didn't do anything else academically beyond that. But working at Clorox, I was working alongside people who'd gone to Harvard, gone to Penn, they went to graduate school at Kellogg and Northwestern, or Cal, or Stanford, or Wharton even. And I realized like I could hang with all of them.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly smart, talented people, and I wanted to come back so that students here would realize what you're getting here and the experience you have and the skills you're building, it's good enough. You can play with anybody. That was something I hadn't expected, but I was really pleased to see it. And so coming back, it's also trying to infuse that confidence in all of you that you should have some swagger. If you've come through here and you've got a degree, you're special.
Yeah.
You can definitely add a lot of value somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And how would you say that you got your foot in the door at Clorox? Like, did you know somebody there? Was it kind of random, or?
Yeah, I worked places before that maybe aren't as familiar names, but I was in food service equipment for a long time. And Clorox actually was a recruiter who reached out and said that one small division of Clorox called Professional Products, PPD, the Professional Products Division, had a need for somebody, and that prompted the relocation. So I didn't know anybody. I did learn once I got there, this was the smallest division of Clorox. It was definitely not the glamour place to be. I didn't know that till I got there, but all I knew was this small team, and then it's company of like 9,000 employees. So I was a little overwhelmed by that. I'd always been in small organizations or small schools, but that small team, we actually, and you obviously have done this project, AC, so you'll know what I'm talking about. But when I'd been there for a couple months, the general manager running that business said, we're going to try and launch a healthcare business centered around a bleach-based wipe that could disinfect, and we're going to try and sell it to acute care hospitals. I had got to play a very strong leadership role in the launch of that project, and we were successful. We took it from zero business to a couple $100 million over the next several years, and transformed the way people thought of this tiny little part of Clorox. Instead of, I never want to go there, a lot of people at Clorox were, I want to go make my career there. And it very much reminded me of some of the experiences here at Beloit. As I mentioned to you, some of the sports teams, which is, oh, that team's terrible, I'd never want to. Well, then we turned into something that while I was here, then in the case of baseball years later, now there are people lining up wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah.
That experience and then some creative presenting that I did in Clorox definitely put me on the map. And led me to them asking me to take on other roles in the more larger parts of the business. And good things came after that too.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that you spent 14 years there?
14, yeah.
How would you say, I know you said like some creative presenting and stuff like that, but how else would you say that you worked your way up the ladder to kind of get into those more like important and like respectable positions, I would say?
Yeah, one thing that I struggled with is in such a large organization, I would have people who'd been there quite a while would encourage or coach me and say, you need to network in the company and just ask different people to have coffee. And I'm very introverted and just shy as well, so I felt like I don't know what to talk to these people about because we didn't have anything in common, or at least I was aware of. So I tried that a little, but it just didn't feel like me. I still would encourage people, if you can, do it. But I went with the attitude of, I was overwhelmed by how many people were there, and I thought, if I try and network or just get to know people and build my reputation that way, I didn't think I'd be very successful. So I decided to pour it all into the way I worked with people, which was no matter who the person was, whatever level they were, didn't matter. I'm going to give everything I've got to make them be successful.
Yeah.
And then anything that I'm asked to do or I'm responsible for, I'm going to put everything I've got into it, and I'll find the joy in that work, even if it's a hard thing or we don't know it's going to work out. What I didn't bank on, but I'm glad, was that people noticed it and said, I like working with that guy. And then I'd start to have people even who were bosses of mine say, and this was weird, but they'd say, I know I'll be working for you someday. Like, I didn't see how that would happen, but they were right. So I just focused on what I could control, and I thought by investing in other people and making them better, that ultimately I'd feel fulfilled, they'd appreciate it. And then what I didn't know but ultimately happened is then that word spread, and leadership felt like you're the right person to lead this larger group.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story for you to tell. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Aside from that, like, what challenges did you face during your time there, like in all positions, in like the beginning and maybe at the top of your experiences there?
Yeah, certainly that first few years, as I've brought it into my class, you've launched those same bleach wipes into healthcare. It was one of the first assignments we do in the class. That was really a challenging time because it doesn't instantly happen, and it took a couple years to start to feel like you were making progress. So discipline and faith and continuing to work hard on something that feels like it may never work out.
Yeah.
That was certainly a challenge. I certainly had my fair share of people challenges where I was either, someone was reporting to me or someone I had to work with, and maybe we aren't on the same page, or maybe they're off course, and I had to try and help them see a different way of doing things. Then there's just weird things that happen too, AC. Like, obviously we all are aware of what went on with COVID, but there was a much lesser outbreak in, I think it was 2009, H1N1. And I was at the time responsible for Clorox cleaning products and disinfecting products for the retail side. So everybody wanted Clorox wipes, and I had to work with all sorts of different parts of the organization, manufacturing and shipping, and figure out how do I get enough to each retailer so that they can keep supplying their shoppers. It's tense when you have Costco and Sam's and Dollar General and all these different massive retailers wanting more from you, and you can't keep up because there's just so much demand. So being able to be a diplomat in those situations and keep people calm, that was certainly a unique challenge too.
Yeah, for sure. Besides like patience and discipline, like what other traits or different skills did you need to like navigate that like kind of corporate or professional career?
Yeah, I think one of the things in it you can find that sometimes it's hard to find, it would be humility. I never wanted to look at myself like I was special because of the title I have. So how am I authentically there for people and approachable, someone that people will share their truth with?
Yeah.
Because then maybe you've experienced this, AC, but you'll see at times when the leader comes in that everyone on the team wants to give them a happy story because they're afraid the leader being upset and it rains down on them somehow. So I felt like that was a really important way to show up, help people have confidence, help them know that they're cared for. I'd say another part too that I think can be challenging in larger companies, I came in and I wanted to invest in people's development. Like, what can we do to help people get better and also show them that we care enough to invest in them? So sales training was something we did, and that was something Clorox had not done in maybe forever. But so to that end, Adrian, it's also about being willing to take a risk, knowing you might have 1,000 people who say this is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, how do I make sure I have the confidence that I can take a risk and do something that hasn't been done before? The same thing applied to the presentations that I did back then too, which is they were certainly a non-traditional approach, but I looked at it as if I bring a creative side of myself, hopefully people find it somewhat humorous but also informative. But if I can do that, it might lift people's spirits and also inspire them to bring more creativity and more thoughtful risk-taking to their job and therefore get better.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what it's all about. Like, people that are listening like to this, you don't necessarily need to be like a leader by like voicing your opinion, but you can lead by example, just by like doing your part and like bringing up new creative ideas. Like you said, maybe that'll encourage more people to do the exact same thing, or even just showing up earlier. Or like if you're a basketball player, showing up early and getting extra shots in, or doing stuff like that, you can show like lead by example. But I also really like what you said in the beginning with like humility. I feel like that's something that's not very common nowadays, unfortunately. Especially within the leadership positions. I feel like it's definitely something that's required. Like you said, you don't want anybody telling you just happy stories because they're scared to tell you the truth. I feel like as a leader, you want people to come to you and lean on you regardless of the situation, regardless of like still waters or shaky waters. So I feel like that's definitely something that every leader should strive for, in my opinion.
I completely agree with you, Adrian. It's really well said.
Yep, thank you. And I think that you mentioned in class one time that you were able to ring the bell during the stock exchange.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to
Yeah.
touch on that experience and how you even got to
Sure.
do that?
Yeah, it's kind of a neat perk, but certainly a challenging project. Clorox is publicly traded, so it's on the stock market, New York Stock Exchange. And every now and then, if you're a publicly traded company, you might organize what's called an analyst day or investor day in New York City, where some of your leadership team, CEO, the chief financial officer, and other executives might come and then give a presentation about the strategy of where the company's going.
Yeah.
So I got to do that twice and play an important part in that. And then after you do that presentation, all these different Wall Street analysts who focus on your sector, in our case it was consumer packaged goods, then there's a huge room filled with them and they start asking you questions. And the way that tended to work, and this was super stressful but kind of fun, I have to admit, is the CEO, who's really, really smart, he would, any question that would get asked, he would take it first, but he would tell those of us, so I was sales, and our chief marketing officers there too, and he would say, the CEO would say, I will get the question, and I'll say, I'm going to take that first, and then I'll pass it to whoever I think's appropriate. So the retail world and how retailers behave is a really challenging landscape. So there were lots of questions about how we were doing it. We were doing it pretty well, so there was a lot of interest. So these questions would come in, the CEO would answer it, and he was smart. So he'd say three things that made a lot of sense, and then he'd pitch it to me. So very much taught me how to think on my feet, which is what are my top 5 answers, and then how do I think about those answers while I'm listening to the CEO say some of them, and then I don't repeat it, but I add to it. So we got to do it, all that presenting and then Q&A, but then it was, now one of the perks is you get to go ring the bell. And so I think once we did to open the market, and they lead you up these back stairs on the market floor, and there's a platform. If you see it on any of the financial networks, you'll see it. And we get all crowded around it, and I think the CEO is the one that got to ring the bell, but since I'm a big giant monster, they had me standing in the back. And then we got to ring the bell to close the market the next time, so I got to be there twice and do it. What you don't know and don't see is behind that wall is this like really not glamorous stairwell that leads up to the platform, but there's like walls, and they give you permanent markers, and you can write a message on that wall. So all these different people who've been there to ring the bell have had an opportunity to write a message, and that's all behind the wall, but you don't get to see it, I think, unless you get to walk up the steps. It's pretty neat.
That's cool. Thank you for that story.
Sure.
I really appreciate that. And kind of like the last question for this section, I guess, and then we'll go to the next section. What advice would you have for like anybody seeking that type of like high level like corporate job?
Yeah, I think I would certainly focus initially about in the early stages of your career, let's say in your 20s, on the execution side of your job. Do that extremely well. In meetings and anytime you're around people who are higher level than you, pay attention to the questions they're asking and the things that they want to know about. And remember it, because it tells you that's what leaders at higher levels are more focused on. I think it's very important that you develop the habit of everybody that you work with, how do I enable them to be better? How do I invest in them? How do I be a good teammate to them? The reason being is at some point you may be their boss, you need them to be inspired by you. And they might evangelize to others how great you are to work with. I was fortunate, I got some of that benefit. So I'd say invest in the people around you as though someday either they might be your boss or you might be theirs, and you really need them. So doing that, I think there's certainly something to be said about hard work. And then I would take a look at what uniquely differentiates you. For me, I'm not I wouldn't say any of the classic business things I'm any better at than anyone else, and I'd say I'm arguably, there are going to be people who are much better at the business strategy. One thing I knew I could do better than anyone else I've ever seen was if you gave me a message and I had to get in front of a group to tell that story or to lift them up or inspire them, inform them in a way that they paid attention to, I could either do that in a pretty inspiring way or I could do it in a really creative way that made people think and feel. That for me, it wasn't presenting itself, but it was something that differentiated me. And then I'd say in my years prior to Clorox and at Clorox, generally speaking, I think a lot of people looked at me as like, if that guy is on stage and he has to speak, I'm going to listen. Whatever he says, I'm interested. That's a powerful thing to have as a leader. And it was a positive thing for sure.
For sure. Thank you for that. And thank you for that advice. And I really like how you said, like, find what makes you unique and kind of use it to market yourself. And especially in the first part, you said how kind of like just like selling yourself in general. And I feel like especially, like you said, people can refer you. And one thing that I learned from like I had like a summer internship with like True Lacrosse, which is like a lacrosse, travel lacrosse team. And we had to like sell private lessons. And one thing that they said was like, oh, sometimes you'll do such a good job that like other parents will like refer you to other parents.
That's right.
And that was true. And I feel like when that happened to me, that was kind of very like empowering. And it's like, it can happen with anything, whether you own like a landscaping business. People could be like, oh, I want my lawn, you know what I'm saying, done also. Or you own like a car wash business, detailing business. Oh, I need somebody to do that also. It's like word of mouth is the best type of advertisement. It's free. So I feel like marketing yourself and trying to sell yourself all the time to anybody, but by being your authentic self, is definitely the most important part. That's what I would say. So
Completely agree with you. I love the way you said that.
Yep.
That's right on.
Thank you for that. This kind of leads us into the next section, which is kind of like the halftime point, I would say, which is like a little prayer section. Father God, I pray that you protect those who are in need and lead us from evil. I pray that everyone has a happy and safe week ahead of us. In Jesus' name, amen. And then that kind of leads us into like the next questions. Who are some mentors or people that you've looked up to along the way?
I was really inspired by someone who's a Beloit grad when I first graduated from here. His name's Jeff Dietz. I want to say class of maybe 69. And I haven't talked to Jeff, it's been far too long. But hilarious, compassionate. When I was trying to find a job, graduating from here and get my start, and ultimately I wound up back in the Atlanta area. He was there, and he was just kind and a huge supporter. He was really smart, very funny, very sarcastic, super accomplished, and but he was really kind and gracious towards me. And I'll never forget. I had my first job in Atlanta, and he said, "Come over, let's go to lunch." And he took me to eat sushi for lunch, and I was not experienced in that. But he just was like, "I've got this. I want you to learn all these things." And so to have someone who is that kind and supportive, who was that successful, I never forgot it. And it's one of the drivers that makes me want to come back and then be that approachable, that loving towards you all, so that you feel like I've got that guy in my corner. But I felt like he was in my corner. I would say, I'm kind of fast forwarding a bit, but at Clorox, I had someone who definitely believed in me a lot, and I will say took a chance by promoting me into the executive committee. His name's Nick Vlahos. Nick's a Chicago guy. He lives out in Southern California now. He was the CEO of The Honest Company. So Jessica Alba is the one that started that. And then now he's working with Hailey Bieber on her new business venture. But Nick he and I had very similar personalities. Always behind me, always picking me up. He's the one who wanted me to be chief customer officer. There could have been more traditional choices that might have made sense to choose. But Nick, I think, saw me for who I was and said, "You're going to lead and inspire this group and make them better, and that's what we need right now." But he was always very gracious with me too. So I'd say those two certainly jump out as mentors.
Yeah, for sure. And what would you say, leaders, as a leader for yourself, on any level, whether it be like the football field, baseball field, Clorox, or even here at Beloit College, what would you say that some traits that a great leader must have?
Yeah, well, we'll go back to class. So, Adrian, of course, you'll remember all these things we did together, but I would say there's a couple different buckets. One would be, a leader's got a vision and has a plan on how to get to that vision, how to realize it. And they're able to communicate that vision really persuasively, compellingly. I'd also say a leader knows how to evolve and innovate and adapt when things go wrong.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
things will go wrong or unexpected stuff happens, and they're able to adapt. A leader also is able to enable and develop others around them. Like they put people in positions to grow, develop, improve, and be successful.
Yep.
That's important. And the last piece I'd say is, I'll say two more things on this. One would be, then leaders get things done. I've seen my fair share of leaders who have lots of ideas and visions, but they don't execute. And the execution's not the glamorous part. A lot of people are in love with strategy, but the way you're able to get it done, I think that's critical for a leader. So I look at those things, and then it's how you do those things. That's your style. And to me, your leadership style's got to flex to the situation. So you'll hear a term sometimes in leadership called situational leadership, which is for the right group or person in a certain moment, what style of leadership do I need to be like democratic and ask for a lot of opinions and have people have a voice? Or is there a moment in time where I need to be more authoritative and say, this is how it's done? Are there times where I need to, as a leader, just hands off and just feel like I'm going to let them do what they do and not interfere? And there's all sorts of examples, but I'll say that's another key piece in leadership is like knowing what style to use at what moment. And it's endlessly challenging, and you'll never get it right all the time. But that's part of why when we see a great leader, we're so admiring, is because they do it better than most.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure that the audience was able to take something for that, hopefully, and apply it to their own leadership aspirations. One thing that I would say, like that I heard from you, was that like situational leadership. I feel like I experienced that myself within my fraternity. I'm the queester, like the manager of finances, on the exec board. So I have to manage dues from a bunch of college kids, and also like their decisions, their financial decisions. So you can imagine how they want to spend the money and stuff like that. So aside from that, like I would say that like sometimes you have to be democratic, like when we're voting on like raising dues. Oh, like does everybody believe in this? Does everybody, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or like authoritative, like it's like, oh, we have a deadline, you have to meet it, and if you don't, there'll be consequences like missing out on this party or having to do extra things or whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's definitely something that I've experienced myself, and I feel like is hopefully relatable to the listener.
Now I got to ask you, like, if someone's late on paying their dues, do you like have to go tune them up, or like what do you do then? Are you do you have goons who take care of that for you?
Not necessarily goons, but we do have a person who's the proconsul, who's like, we kind of like to joke around that he's the enforcer, because he can put people on social, which means that you cannot really have fun in the house. If you can imagine what I'm saying.
In which fraternity?
Sigma Chi.
Okay, wait, hey, who's the enforcer?
Proconsul right now.
Yeah.
Tyrell Spivey. He's a football player.
Yeah, I know Terrell. Yeah, he's an offensive lineman.
Yep.
I would not want him coming and asking for money.
Yep. So I'm very thankful for him. Anybody that I have like problems with, I have a good relationship with him. I kind of pass it off to him. And we recently had elections, so it's something that I've been talking to about the next queester and the next proconsul, trying to make sure that they have a good relationship. And that's another thing. I feel like leaders have to work together, collaborate, delegate, but also get stuff done. Like you said, I feel like actions speak louder than words. So I feel like you could say all these things. Oh, I want to. Like I've been philanthropy chair in the past for Sigma Chi also, like, oh, I want to raise $10,000. It's easy to say all these things, but it's better to actually raise 1,000 than say you're going to do a bunch of things and not do anything.
That's a great way of putting it, Adrian, of the idea of, I think leaders can gain a lot of respect and followers by setting a goal that can be attained and then getting it done.
Exactly.
And that can be more admirable than setting some massive goal and then having no chance.
Yep, and as we've talked about, I think in your class, and I've also taken intro leadership with Gloria Bradley, sometimes it can lead to burnout, having such high, ambitious goals that you can't reach, or maybe by yourself. So it's always good to have a team with you. Aside from that, let's see. Who has motivated you to become the best version of yourself?
Gosh, it's such a long list, Adrian, that I would say, people that I thought were better at things than me, that's certainly, whether they intended or not, it pushed me to want to be better.
Yeah.
I also took a lot of inspiration from theater, movies, from characters that I'd see.
Yeah.
And I would be inspired from great leaders that you might see, even though it was a story. And I'd also be equally inspired by terrible leaders and think, I don't want to be that.
For sure.
Those would be some of the different examples, yeah.
Yep, for sure. Do you have like any children, or are you a father yourself?
I do have a daughter. She's a
Yeah.
senior at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, and that's what the next question was, like, what have you learned from being a father, I guess?
Certainly more about humility than you'd ever want to know, but and then how to put someone else before yourself.
Yep.
Is I think with any kids, they love you, at the same time they're pretty focused on them. So as a father, it's about getting really involved and feeling excited about what's going on in their life. And I've been fortunate with kids, been able to share a lot of things in common and have a really great time. It's a tremendous joy to do it.
Yep, thank you for that. What would you say the 3 values that you hold close to you as a man are?
Certainly speaking my voice, being authentic, helping other people, like exhibiting compassion,
Yeah.
empathy. I view compassion as I care about what's going on with others and I want to do something about it. So that's how I would think about that. I'll say discipline as well.
Yep.
Is certainly up there too. Working hard at things and figuring out how can I get better, how can I do something, how do I push myself. Those things jump off the page for
Yeah.
sure. I think the other thing, though, that's come more into focus for me in recent years, I've always been, I've probably come off as somewhat stoic to many people, but I am very emotional. So one of the values I think that's been important to me over the last several years, even while I was a leader at Clorox, is letting people know I love them.
Yeah.
And that what that means. And it means, like, sometimes I'm going to tell you something that's hard for you to hear. Sometimes it means I'm just telling you how great you are.
Yep.
And everything in between. So not leaving that behind and letting people know I care about them,
Yep.
that to me is an important thing that I think it's hard, I think probably for a lot of men to feel like they can open up and really share emotions that way,
Yeah.
or even say things like that. But with each year I just get more like, I'm okay if it makes people, if that's not something others would do,
Yeah.
but it's important for me to have people hear it.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel that's definitely something that's very important as a leader, is making sure that you tell people when they're in the wrong and like showing that you care about, because I feel like that shows that you care about them, because it shows that you believe in them. As somebody that's like wants to be a future teacher, I touched on this before. It's very bad if you're a teacher who is very like complacent with your students and their outcomes. For example, like if you see a student who's falling behind, you should always try to encourage them and like show that you see like more out of them. And even like whether it's an athlete or like in Clorox, like empowering people as opposed to bringing them down, because if somebody's a low performer, whether it's in the fraternity, sports team, or Clorox, anything, it's not going to help the team by bringing them down. It's only going to help them by trying to bring them up, trying to grab them by the hand and help them up. And I feel like that's something that great leaders do, is that they empower others and they also hold them accountable when they're not showing up on time or they're not doing the right thing. So I feel like that's definitely something that's very important. Thank you for that.
I completely agree, yeah.
And what changes would you like to see within your surrounding community? I think that you're like involved with like Impact Beloit and stuff like that. So what would you say?
Yeah, I think if I define the community as like the college for now, just to start, I think we're heading in a great direction, which is getting more like practical experience, career developing insights, experiences for students. Those things to me, like will make more people want to be here, but then also I would think make students feel like this is what I came for.
Yeah.
Yes, there's all sorts of other activities while I'm in college that I want to feel and experience, but this overarching goal that I have of like, I want to position myself for a career in something. I may not even know what it is yet, but like, how do we do that and give you all as students realistic opportunities to do things so you know how you feel, and it's not just, even though this is important, just the classroom book learning,
Yeah.
but it's also like, let's go do it together and understand.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's very important. And like you said, it can make people feel like they're getting a lot out of their experience, but I feel like it also helped them be more successful after college. Obviously, you can get more successful alumni, hopefully, who are making more money and can donate more money, even, you never know, or even are just happier in general in life. So whatever their goals are. But I would say that building those real life experiences while you're here is definitely important, because I mean, I would say that's what I feel like we all came here to do to college, is to see what our next step is in life and kind of figure it out, what our passions are. I mean, I came here as a business econ major. I changed to Spanish and education. I found my passion. I found that through going through observations and stuff like that, even, and confirming that through observations, like having a bunch of kids come around your table, like seeing you as a role model, like asking you, why are you our teacher instead? Like, I feel like that's kind of, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like very empowering and can kind of be eye-opening. And I feel like without that real-world experience, it can be a lot tougher to make that decision, or maybe like take that leap to change majors or do anything else. Like, other people might have to make those decisions. So
Yeah, your story's fabulous, because, and I've had this conversation even the last week with multiple students, where you come in thinking maybe you want to do one thing, and then you realize, and my daughter was the same way, and then you realize after a year or two, maybe three, like, it's not that.
yeah,
That's success. That's part of the college process of figuring out, it's testing your beliefs, your hypothesis, and then saying, not this, I actually think it's this now.
exactly.
You're doing it right by doing that way. Not everybody's got the fortune, I guess, of I know what I want to do and it never changes. Wonderful, but more often I think it's like what you've experienced, and I certainly do too, which is I'm experimenting, I'm figuring it out, and I'm changing, and I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
It does get me into then with students here as well. One of the other things I think about is I want you all to see that the things you're doing are actually developmental towards your career, even if you're like, well, wait, it's just me and my group in the sorority, or me and my group on this team. Like, oh no, all those are lessons that will be transferable into your career. So it's helping elevate consciousness. That's a tie-in right there to the title of the show. So that you realize, hey, everything I'm doing here actually makes a difference in my development.
Yep, for sure. And like the next question is kind of more personal, I guess. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Because yet again, this is about like recording history, also preserving it. But like, you can kind of look back on this, or your daughter can look back on this.
Right.
Your grandkids in the future, you never know. So I feel that's what this is about: is really recording and kind of being able to keep it for years to come, hopefully. So, what would you say?
Yeah, 5 to 10 years. Doggone it. And I even teach you all about how to answer this in an interview. So if I were following my course, I would say, well, I expect to be right here, but I will hopefully be in an even more important role that's making a bigger impact. But I guess the simple, more truthful answer is, I don't know. 5 years seems more reasonable.
Yeah.
I'd love to still be doing this and helping students.
Yeah.
Adding a second class, I didn't know I'd ever do that.
Yeah.
I certainly get involved in some strategic things for the college as well. So I could see continuing to help and being a part of that. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I do work with a lot of different companies as a consultant or an executive coach, so I would assume I'd still be doing that. But the list of things that I might be involved in, I suspect it'll be something that I've never done before. I'll be doing that in 5 years, but no idea what it is yet.
And that's what you might be talking about right now. You might not even know what it is in the back of your head. And then
That's right.
5 to 10 years from now, I feel that's what the beauty of this is. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Sure, you got it.
What advice would you have for the next generation of like leaders and change makers in general who are listening to this?
Certainly, what I observe in general is, we're kind of in a world where there's so much technology around us, and we can see everybody else's story unfolding, whether it's accurate or not.
Yep.
Through digital media, and I think it can get tempting to just watch what everyone else is doing as opposed to actually doing it yourself. So one piece of advice would be, yeah, keep your fingers on the pulse of technology, but get out and do things, create things. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations
Yep.
where you have to learn, grow, develop. Learn how to listen to other people.
Yep.
Learn how to embrace conflict and work through it, and have enough faith and maturity to know that after a conflict with people, you tend to be closer together
Yep.
and more connected afterwards. Certainly learning to take the initiative, to be creative. Like those things, I would have said those 20 years ago. I think they still matter now.
Yep.
And so my advice would be like, how do I practice those things?
Yep.
And take a risk. Do something that maybe no one else does.
Yep.
I will say one thing I learned over and over again is if I had a vision of doing something creative or different, unique, I noticed there were times if I tried to explain it to someone wanting them to buy in, they would just look at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
Like they just didn't get it. And likewise, I'm sure there have been people who have explained things to me and I don't get it, but they know and they go off and do it. In my case, I had good success with that, where it's like, I'm just going to do it and people will get it when they see it. But having that type of confidence and courage to be able to say, whether anyone gets this or not, this is what I think it should be.
Yeah.
I would encourage future generations, like, have that mindset. Working on communication skills, your writing skills, your speaking skills, your ability to interact with someone when you meet them for the first time. I think those things will stand out enormously because so many people are addicted to their phone.
Yep.
And technology. So the people who can write, who can communicate, I think will stand out more and more as time goes on.
Yep, for sure. Thank you for that.
Sure.
And one thing that I would just say is like embrace failure. Even if you do fail something, you at least know you tried, you put your best foot forward, and you ultimately learn something from it. If you just sat on your couch doing nothing, playing video games, you didn't learn anything from that. That's all I would say. So
Yeah,
go out there.
It's a great ad, and a throw to that as well. You'll see in sales, often they say if you got a yes the first time, then it means you probably didn't ask for enough. And I think that's maybe your embracing failures. You need to kind of push yourself and see what's the limit, what's the boundary. If you're successful every single time, then it's probably reasonable to assume maybe you didn't push yourself or stretch enough.
Yeah. And I really like how you said that. Like, if you said yes the first time, you probably didn't ask enough. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right.
I like that for sure because I've heard the exact kind of not the exact opposite, but like there is no such thing as no in sales. For example, you just need to explain yourself or like give them an answer or like for example like with private lessons. Oh, it's too expensive. Like, how valuable is your child's future? Like, asking questions like that, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's good constructive tension there.
yeah,
See,
exactly.
I
Like stuff like that. Like that. Those are stuff that I've been taught. Some schemes or not schemes, like different like skills and traits I've been taught to try to use as a salesman. But I feel like that's very important. Is like even know the first time you can keep trying to push and trying to like explain yourself and I don't know, show your value. I would say, and that's the most important part. So, yep. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is kind of the section where you can kind of give your like closing thoughts, any comments. I know I just kind of asked you to give you any advice, but like, do you have anything that you would like to, I don't know, record or even anything to say to listeners?
No, so well, walk me through AC. Tell me about the demographics of your listening audience. Let me be a marketer for a minute. Like, tell me who's that target audience you're going after here.
My target audience is honestly anybody. I just want to. Hopefully I can bring on different guests each time. As you saw last episode, we had Taylor Manny, who is a Pilates instructor. It was more so like a health-focused podcast or episode. So I feel like trying to tailor it to everybody, male, female, all ages. All topics. Hopefully we have people on from like education.
Yeah.
Like I hope to have like vice principals of like Merrill Elementary School on.
Oh, I love it.
To talk about that perspective. I would say that there is no real target audience. I would just say obviously leaders and change makers, but I hope that anybody can take something from these episodes. But overall, hopefully every episode can kind of change up and get a taste of all the elements in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, you asked like anything I would share with the audience is I'll kind of bring it back to you and even what you're doing here. This is it's wonderful structure, great set. You do it really professionally. But I take inspiration watching what you're doing with your show here. And I'd encourage others to kind of look at that and think, how might you do it too?
For sure.
How do you come up with a way to kind of tell your story or tell other people's stories, all for the idea of kind of pushing people in a positive, constructive direction. So I know I try to do that in my own way. You're doing that here. So I'd say anyone in the audience feeling that inspiration, saying, the temptation that I think some people feel is, well, it's really not that big of a deal. It's nobody's really going to see it, or nobody's going to, and I can see people maybe out in the audience might feel that way, like it's not really that big. But everything maybe starts small, but you keep grinding away at it, and you just never know what doors it may open and who you might impact. Which kind of brings us full circle back to one of the reasons I come here is I may never know what all the students that I've gotten to work with, and it's a long list, it's been awesome, where their lives will go, where their careers will go. I look forward, hopefully they'll stay in touch.
Yeah.
But my bet is that at some point along that journey, there's something that I shared with them in my work with them that came to the surface and made them better, made them more confident, made them feel more secure. So I would encourage also the audience to say, don't worry about visibility. Just have faith that whatever you're going to do will have this wonderful ripple effect that's going to make the world and make others around you better off as a result. And I know you're doing that with this show, for sure.
Thank you. And I would just say, just be authentically yourself. Also, that's the most important part, and hopefully people are reciprocal to it. Thank you for your closing thoughts. I really appreciate that. To end off, I just want to say thank you, Matt, for your time. And for sharing your stories and wisdom with the audience. We are very grateful. I just wanted to thank anyone who's watched the video. I pray that you can reach and accomplish your goals. And thank you for your time. This was the Imperishable Consciousness Platform. Thank you.